Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
A man can survive enemies outside him and still be destroyed by the ones using his own blood as a disguise. That is what makes rage and desire so dangerous. They do not arrive looking foreign. They sound like instinct, justice, hunger, confidence, masculinity, relief. One tells him he has been disrespected and must answer immediately. The other tells him he deserves pleasure because life is hard and restraint is boring. Both speak with the voice of urgency. Both make the future feel irrelevant for a few minutes. A man under their command can ruin years of discipline in one conversation, one message, one night, one click, one reaction, one weak surrender dressed up as freedom. He may still look strong from the outside, but inside the throne has been taken. Something lower is making decisions while he stands nearby, pretending it is choice. The frightening part is how reasonable these forces feel when they rise. A man does not usually feel foolish while he is burning his own life down. He feels justified. He feels alive. The heat in his chest convinces him that silence would be weakness. The pull toward pleasure convinces him that denial would be punishment. In those moments, the body builds a case faster than the mind can question it. Every insult becomes evidence. Every temptation becomes permission. Every private frustration looks for a door. Later, when the heat passes, he sees the wreckage more clearly. The words he cannot take back, the trust he damaged, the money wasted, the focus drained, the shame sitting quietly after the pleasure disappears. Nobody needs to lecture him then. He already knows. The problem is that knowing afterward does not undo what was obeyed in the moment. A man who cannot govern his temper becomes easy to move. People do not need to defeat him with strength if they can pull one string and make him expose himself. A disrespectful comment, a look, a delay, a challenge to his ego, and suddenly he is no longer operating from purpose. He is reacting from injury. That makes him predictable. The person who learns his trigger owns a piece of his behavior. The situation does not need to be serious. His pride will make it serious. Many men mistake this for power because rage feels forceful. It tightens the voice, hardens the face, raises the pulse, gives the illusion of command. Yet command is not the same as combustion. A fire can be intense and still destroy the house it was supposed to warm. Strength without control is just energy looking for a target. Desire has a quieter method. It does not always explode. Often it negotiates. It waits until a man is tired, lonely, bored, unappreciated, anxious, or disappointed with himself, then offers an exit that looks harmless. One indulgence, one message, one scroll, one fantasy, one private habit no one will know about. The danger is not only the act itself, but the training behind it. Each surrender teaches the mind where to run when discomfort appears. Instead of learning patience, it learns escape. Instead of learning focus, it learns stimulation. Instead of building depth with a real woman, real work, real purpose, real responsibility, it learns to chase the easiest hit available. A man may call it normal, but normal can still make him weaker. What he repeatedly uses for relief slowly becomes his master. The Stoics understood this with brutal clarity. They were not trying to remove feeling from a man. They were trying to stop feeling from becoming law. Epictetus, who had endured slavery, taught that a person's freedom begins with what he can govern inside himself. That sounds simple until the blood is hot and the appetite is loud. Anyone can speak about discipline when the room is calm. The test arrives when the insult touches pride or the craving touches loneliness. In that moment, philosophy stops being decoration. Either the principle has entered the body, or it has remained a sentence you admire. A man who cannot pause before reaction is not fully free. No matter how loudly he speaks about independence, his chain may not be visible, but it tightens every time impulse gives an order, and he obeys without inspection. History gives enough examples of men who conquered land, armies, rooms, and reputations, yet could not conquer the forces inside them. Kings have lost kingdoms over women they could not resist. Generals have made foolish decisions because pride could not bear insult. Powerful men have built empires with discipline, then invited ruin through appetite. The lesson is not that desire itself is evil, or that intensity has no place. A dead man feels nothing, and numbness is not virtue. The lesson is that ungoverned force always collects a price. What begins as a private weakness eventually becomes public consequence. A hidden habit changes judgment. A repeated outburst changes trust. A secret indulgence changes the eyes. People may not know the details, but they sense when a man is not fully in command of himself. His presence leaks. Neuroscience gives a colder explanation for what old wisdom already knew. The brain learns through repetition and reward. When rage is rehearsed often, the path into rage becomes quicker. When pleasure is used as medicine for every uncomfortable state, the craving system grows more demanding. The nervous system does not ask whether the behavior honors the man's future. It only learns what gets repeated, what gets rewarded, what relieves tension, what produces a strong emotional charge. This is why a man can hate a habit and still return to it. Part of him has been trained to see that habit as escape, comfort, power, release. Breaking it requires more than disgust. Disgust may wake him up, but replacement builds the new root. He needs another response ready before the old one arrives, because impulse moves fast and vague promises move slowly. A single desire has toppled more powerful men than any army in history. Kings who commanded nations, emperors who ruled the known world, men with everything a person could want, brought down not by their enemies but by their own lust. They had the power to conquer territories and the weakness to be conquered by a craving they could not control. This same force works on you right now, every day, in a form more powerful than any king ever faced, and you barely recognize it as the same ancient enemy that destroyed the mightiest men who ever lived. You think it is harmless. The rulers who lost everything to it thought so too at first. The pattern repeats across every century, so consistent it reads like a law. King David, one of the most powerful men of his age, saw Bathsheba and let his desire lead him into disgrace and disaster. Henry VIII reshaped and destabilized an entire nation, chasing his appetites through marriage after marriage. Emperor after emperor, undone by mistresses, wrecked by scandals, brought low by affairs that cost them their power and sometimes their lives. These were not weak men. They were the strongest men of their times, and still this one desire defeated them, which should tell you something about the force you are dealing with. When you imagine you have it under control, you face a version of this that no king in history could have imagined. Every emperor who lost his empire to lust had access to a limited number of women in his physical presence. You carry in your pocket a device that gives you access to more beautiful women than any ruler ever saw. In a lifetime, endless and instant, available every second of every day. The kings were undone by what stood in front of them. You are surrounded constantly by an infinite supply engineered to capture exactly this desire, and you swim in it so completely that you have stopped seeing it as remarkable. What destroyed the most powerful men in history now sits in your hand as ordinary as air. This is not an accident, and seeing why changes everything. A man trapped in the cycle of lust is a man who is controlled, and control is exactly the point. The endless chase, the temporary release, the return of the craving, the chase again. This loop keeps a man perpetually occupied, his energy and attention and drive consumed by a hunger that never stays satisfied. A man stuck in this cycle is not building, not conquering, not ascending. He is running on a wheel, and the wheel keeps him docile, distracted, and drained. Whether by design or simply by how it functions, the effect is the same. A man ruled by lust is a man easily kept in his place, which is nowhere. The cycle itself is engineered to trap you, and the mechanics are worth seeing clearly. The chase excites you. The release relieves you briefly, and then the craving returns, always returning, pulling you back into the chase before the last release has fully faded. This loop never completes, never delivers the lasting satisfaction it promises, because it is built to keep you cycling rather than to fulfill you. Each turn of the wheel drains a little more of your energy, your focus, your drive, and deposits nothing lasting in return. You feel like you are pursuing something, but you are only feeding a hunger designed to stay hungry, and the feeding is the trap. Lust is your most animal desire, the rawest and most primitive drive you carry, and this is precisely why mastering it matters so much. The part of you that craves is the part you share with every beast, the ancient animal wiring that seeks immediate gratification without thought for anything higher. A man who cannot control this desire is a man ruled by his most animal self, dragged through life by an appetite he shares with dogs. But a man who can tame it demonstrates something rare, a mastery over his own nature, a proof that the higher part of him governs the lower. The taming of this one desire is a test of whether you rule yourself or your instincts rule you. Joseph Ledoux's work matters because it gives a man no room to keep pretending that anger is only a personality issue. The amygdala, that old alarm system inside the brain, can start firing before the slower, more careful parts of the mind have properly entered the conversation. The prefrontal cortex, the part tied to judgment, restraint, and weighing consequences, does not always get the first vote when threat is detected. That means the first surge of anger should not be trusted like a sacred message. It may be fast, but fast is not the same as accurate. For a short period, especially in the early heat, a man can be living under the rule of alarm rather than judgment. If he does not understand this, he will keep calling reaction truth. He will mistake a hijacked nervous system for a clear moral position. Around 20 minutes can matter more than people realize. Not because every human reaction follows a perfect clock, but because the idea forces respect for the heat window. When anger rises, the first task is not to win the argument. The first task is to avoid handing your future to a brain state built for survival, not wisdom. Many men ruin themselves inside that window. They send the message. They threaten the person. They expose the secret. They raise the voice in front of the child. They punch the wall, humiliate the partner, insult the friend, curse the colleague, or make a decision that cannot be pulled back cleanly. Then, when the rational mind returns, the damage is already standing in the room. Apologies may soften it. Explanations may explain it. Neither one erases the fact that command was absent when command was needed. A man who says, "I just see red," is not describing power. He is describing a security breach. Something enters his system, takes the controls, and uses his mouth, hands, face, posture, and memory against him. People around him start learning how to move him. A disrespectful tone becomes a lever. A certain accusation becomes a button. A challenge to his pride becomes a leash. That is a humiliating way to live, no matter how masculine it appears from the outside. Rage can look dominant to weak eyes because it is loud, but loudness is cheap. Any uncontrolled thing can make noise. Real command is quieter, heavier, harder to fake. It is the ability to feel the animal rise and still refuse to let it run the kingdom. A man who cannot delay his reaction does not own his reaction. He rents it from whatever provoked him. The dangerous lie is that anger must be expressed immediately, or it becomes dishonest. Many people use that belief to excuse emotional violence. They claim they are being real, direct, authentic, passionate, unable to tolerate disrespect. Underneath the performance, something smaller is happening. The man has confused pressure with truth. He feels the heat and assumes the heat has moral authority. But feeling strongly does not make a thought correct. It only means the nervous system is loud. A person can be furious and wrong, furious and insecure, furious and childish, furious and terrified of being seen as weak, furious because a wound from years ago has been touched by a situation that barely deserved that level of response. Without discipline, anger becomes a lawyer for the lowest interpretation of reality. It argues well. It wins fast. It leaves wreckage behind. Knowledge is useless if it never changes behavior. Knowing that the brain can be hijacked during anger means a man must build rules before the fire starts. Once the heat is already high, improvisation is poor strategy. He needs a protocol so simple it can survive the storm. No serious reply for 20 minutes. No message sent while the body is shaking. No decision made while revenge feels satisfying. No argument continued once the voice changes. Walk, breathe, leave the room, wash the face, step outside, sit in silence. Do whatever removes the weapon from the hand and the microphone from the wound. This is not avoidance. Avoidance runs forever. Discipline withdraws long enough to return with judgment. Anyone can speak while burning. Only a governed man can refuse the performance when every nerve is asking him to make it worse. In 328 BCE, at a drunken feast, Alexander the Great, the man who had conquered the known world, sat listening to his old friend, and General Clytus mock him. Something snapped. In a fit of pure rage, Alexander seized a spear and drove it through the man who had fought beside him for years, killing one of his closest companions on the spot over a comment that meant nothing. The greatest conqueror in history, master of empires, commander of armies that toppled civilizations, could not command 30 seconds of his own temper. The most powerful man alive was, in that instant, completely powerless against the anger rising in his own chest. What followed reveals the true cost of that unmanaged moment. Alexander wept for 3 days. He refused food. He considered ending his own life. The man who had never been defeated in battle was shattered by what his own rage had made him do, tormented beyond bearing by the murder of a friend over nothing. All his power, all his conquests, all his glory offered no protection from the agony of that single lost moment, and no comfort afterward. He had everything the world could offer, and it meant nothing against the weight of what 30 seconds of anger had cost him. The conqueror of nations was conquered, utterly by himself. The lesson buried in this story should stop you cold. If Alexander the Great, with all his power and discipline and greatness, could be undone by a single moment of anger, then no one is safe from this enemy, least of all you. Skill offers no protection. Wealth offers no protection. Power, intelligence, achievement, none of it shields a man from the 30 seconds where rage takes the wheel. The idea that you are somehow immune, that your competence in other areas will save you here, is exactly the delusion that leaves you exposed. The most capable men in history have been destroyed by this, which means capability is no defense at all. The Stoic philosophers studied anger more seriously than almost any emotion because they understood its unique destructive power. Seneca, who advised emperors, wrote an entire work on it, calling anger a temporary madness, a brief insanity that seizes a man and makes him do what the sane version of himself never would. He saw that in the grip of rage, a man is not himself, is not thinking, is possessed by something that will destroy everything he values if he lets it act. The Stoics taught that the only reliable defense was to prevent the anger from taking hold in the first place, to catch it early, because once it has full control, reason is gone and the madness runs its course. The mechanism behind this madness has a physical basis worth knowing. When anger floods you, the primitive, reactive part of your brain hijacks control from the rational part, and for those crucial seconds, the thinking, judging, consequence, weighing part of you goes offline. This is why you do things in anger that you would never do calmly. You are quite literally not operating with your full mind, the higher functions overridden by an ancient emotional system built for immediate reaction rather than wise choice. The rage is not you making a decision. It is an older, cruder system seizing the controls while the real you is locked out, and it acts before you can return. The defense against this is not to suppress the anger once it has you, which is nearly impossible, but to build the discipline that catches it before it takes hold. The gap between the trigger and your reaction is where your power lives.